Hi, welcome to Head Talks, the podcast from Headforwards. I'm your host, Owen Hodge, and today I'm joined by partner for advisory and consulting here at Headforwards, Pete Reed. Pete,
Hi,
thanks
Owen.
for coming on.
Yeah, no problem at all. Really looking forward to it.
Great stuff. So, you recently moved back down to Cornwall, I understand.
I have, yes.
Yeah.
So, grew up in Cornwall, but recently moved back down. So, looking forward to exploring and experiencing all the great things that Cornwall has to offer.
Yeah. How close are you to the office?
About 25 minutes if the traffic's good.
Not
obviously,
during the summer.
Yeah, obviously 2 hours during the summer.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So today we're going to be talking around sort of IT and business, IT strategy, what that sort of means, a few topics around that area. I know you recently did an article that was in Cornwall Business as well, which is pretty interesting stuff. So would you mind just talking to us a little bit about IT strategy, what that means, just as a high level?
Yeah, so probably the first thing I'd say, Owen, is I think that IT strategy is probably an old concept now.
Yeah.
I think that you should have a business strategy, and as part of the business strategy, you have a technology strategy within that. I think where you've got a separate business strategy and a separate IT strategy, it potentially creates a divide between the business and IT. That isn't to say that IT hasn't got really, important things that it needs to think about itself. But I think in terms of strategy, there should be one business strategy with a technical element to that.
And is that something you think's evolved over the last X number of years, 10 years or so? How has that changed over the last kind of 10 years, would you say?
Well, I think there are very few businesses or organisations out there now which haven't got a significant sort of technology footprint.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really sort of changed it. And I think the advancements in technology and also how all of us as sort of consumers now use technology really means that, a significant part of any business is technology and how it uses its data.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do understand that. So how does I noticed I think the quote that you had in, it was Business Corn, wasn't it? It was technology and data strategy is a responsibility of all business leaders. Just interested by that sort of idea. So I understand having a single strategy makes sense. What does that look like for, I'd say, non-technical leaders in the business? How is it possible for them to own the more technical side of their business strategy?
Well, I think that's a great question, and one of the biggest challenges that's out there. Certainly, what I mean around all business leaders need to own the technology strategy is that they should all understand enough about the sort of technology strategy and how it is helping to sort of drive the business goals forwards or the organisational goals forwards. And this is where I think communication is so important. So it's really important, I think, that the technology strategy is written in a way where it is really clear how it informs the business goals, the business objectives. And I think likewise it's really important that the technology teams really understand what the business is trying to achieve, and not just at a visionary level, at quite a sort of specific level. The business needs to achieve more sales, or we need to make sure that we're delivering a better job for the sort of people who consume our services. So it's really important that everybody understands what problem we're trying to solve, why we're trying to solve that problem, and how we're going to sort of measure that.
Yeah, would you say that I find myself saying this around a lot of topics around this sort of IT and agile space, which is there seems to be almost a mentality and cultural reset if necessary, or at least an initial consideration in that space before we start talking about the details of what might be in the technology strategy from a technology point of view. You mentioned communication. Would you say that's if you were going in and we're talking, right, let's look at your strategy, is that where you start?
Certainly my experience, Owen, is that it's rarely actually the technology solution is the problem.
Yeah.
I think, it's not unusual for a technology solution to be built or part built or not built at all that was trying to solve a problem that not quite everybody understood.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's that can certainly happen. But yeah, definitely for me, the people, it's actually people who deliver transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important that everybody's on the same page, that the culture's right. When you're delivering, certainly any, whether it's small scale transformation or large scale transformation, it's quite difficult to
Mm-hmm.
actually sort of deliver on that. And that's ultimately because when you're doing transformation, you're changing. So you might be changing. You might be changing what 6 or 7 teams do, and 4 of those teams might really not like what they're doing and be really, they're really, they want that change. It's going to be brilliant for them. Whereas you might have 3 of those teams who they really like what they're doing. They do a really good job at it. And for them, it's not quite clear why they need to change.
Yeah.
And that's why communication becomes really important, because in that scenario, you've potentially got 4 teams who really understand why we need to change, and are really excited and energized about it. Partly as well because they don't like what they're necessarily doing at the moment.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas you've got the other 3 teams who understand the reason for the sort of change, but aren't quite as sort of bought into it as the other teams. They really like what they're doing. They really like the team. They do a really good job. They constantly get really good feedback. So that's where communication really sort of comes in, and is really important, because it's about actually getting the 7 teams to understand that. And sometimes you've got to deliver, difficult messages where you've actually got to say to those 3 teams, we know you do a great job. We know what you're doing is really right, but it's for the greater good of the organisation.
Yeah. So that's almost the first challenge for the leaders in that space. Then I assume is, like you say, getting everyone bought in and pulling in the same direction. Because if you don't start that way, it's going to be a struggle, I assume.
Yeah, definitely. If you don't, and I think sometimes that's spending the time and effort on that can be often, undervalued, and the time that you need to spend on it underestimated. I think we've probably all been there, where it's very easy to say, are we going to solve this problem? And we've got this great new technology solution over here, and it's going to solve it really quickly. And it's quite easy actually for any organisation, large or small, to suddenly be focusing more on the technology solution and what that's going to do and the new features that it's going to bring, and sort of lose sight of that communication, that culture, and those other things that need to change.
Yeah, I've seen that quite a lot of times. I think, like you say, it's not uncommon, is it? We get the glossy sales pitch and the new exciting technology that we've read an article about or whatever that's going to solve all of our problems. And I think it's easy for certain stakeholders in certain organizations to go, right, we have to be using this tool because everyone else is. Why wouldn't we be using it? Where can we now shoehorn that in around the business so that we're using it, rather than looking at, well, what's your priorities in terms of what are the processes you've got, agnostic to the technology solution that might be used to fix them? What are the problems that are causing you the most pain, or the processes that you feel need overhauling or attention? And let's look at that before we start considering which technology solutions are going to match to that problem. But quite often I think people do take it the other way around because it's more interesting and exciting. And
I think you can understand that, because there are just some fantastic pieces of software out there now, and the low-code software is developed in a way where it's really easy to sort of configure it, and if you do that right, then you can deliver benefit really, really quickly. But often often what you've got to do to be able to use some of those sort of fantastic sort of tools that are out there is you've actually got to do quite a lot of business process re-engineering.
Exactly.
You've got to change the process so actually the process is able to utilize the sort of power of the tool, and it's that changing of the process and to be able to use the sort of power of the tool, which I think is more often than not underestimated.
Yeah. And it's probably the most challenging bit as well, which is why it's also easy or convenient to ignore that bit.
And I always say that there are some fantastic tools, products, sort of capability out there, and the technology advancement is going to continue.
Yeah.
But you can have two organisations that have got very similar problems, but actually those organisations are different, and they may use the same tool to deliver their own transformation, to deliver benefit and business value for the people who consume their services. But if they haven't, what they won't be able to do is organisation A will be different to organisation B, so how they deploy it will be different. How they're currently organised, how their teams are currently organised, the capability that they've got will be different, and those are the nuances and subtleties that you need to take into account.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I can see that absolutely. What do you see then as some of the we've touched on them maybe already, but some of the common pitfalls to tackling implementing an IT strategy or business strategy that has an IT element, if we're talking about one strategy?
Well, I think we've talked a lot about communication and getting the handshake right with the rest of the organisation. More specifically, I think for the technology leaders and technology teams, it's making sure that they're voicing the things that they need to happen in order for them to have the right foundations in place for things to be successful. I think that what can happen, I think IT organisations are actually often really great at responding to the needs of their sort of customers, but they're not so great actually at saying, well, this is what we need to do ourselves. And I suppose that probably a really good example of that is that if for instance IT is holding a lot of technical debt, so they've got lots of things which are out of support or going to go out of support, the likelihood is that if they're going to implement sort of new technologies, those technologies have to sort of interact with some of the other systems that they've got, and that then probably forces those things to be upgraded at the sort of wrong time, or it feels like it's going to be a surprise. I mean, one of the analogies that I always use is that if you take things like mobile phones, probably if you asked a senior business leader, when was the last time that you updated the software on your mobile phone? They'd probably say, fairly recently. I updated it, in the last month. Then if you said to them, well, when was the last time you updated the sort of, one of the main systems that you're using in your business? They probably don't know the answer to it, and it could be several years.
Yeah, absolutely. You can have another podcast altogether probably talking about how to manage technical debt. It's come up a few times, but that's absolutely, because again, easy to be distracted by the shiny new thing, and we need to do more and more and be churning out more new stuff constantly. It's easy for, again, that focus to drift from keeping the underlying infrastructure platforms maintained and current as well.
The cloud in itself is a fantastic tool which gives you sort of lots of flexibility, but that that's the foundation that IT need to sort of put in place in order for the business strategy to be able to sort of benefit from that. Another analogy that I sometimes use is you you're looking at home and you're thinking, great, we're going to we're going to buy this brilliant new sort of power shower, and it's going to be absolutely sort of brilliant, and it looks sort of fabulous, and you put it in there, but then you actually realise that the pipes that you've got in the house are this big, and they need to be that big in order for it to really sort of work. So it never really works to its full potential.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, to get the best out of the technology or the new technology you're trying to layer in, then exactly, you need to keep things current, maybe address technical debt, and that can sometimes be, not as obvious in terms of as visible to stakeholders in the business in terms of, well, what have you been doing for the last few sprints or last few months or whatever it might be. It's like, well, we've just been getting our house in order, actually, and you might not see any new features or functionality, but what we're doing is now enabling us to go faster or to deliver this next great feature.
I think the other challenge, definitely for sort of the technology leaders, and again it goes back to sort of communication, is IT has its own language and it talks in its own individual way, and sometimes there's an expectation that the individuals across the organisation who aren't in IT understand that.
Yeah.
So I always think a really good thing is making sure that could your gran or granddad understand that?
Right.
And if they can understand it, then you've probably explained it sort of quite well.
Yes.
That isn't to say that there's not lots of elderly people out there who are really sort of tech savvy, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do, absolutely. Yeah. So we mentioned a few of the challenges and the things we need to tackle. What does how can you sort of measure the success of an IT strategy then?
I think you measure the success of an IT strategy, and this is where it needs to be part of a business strategy, by the business achieving its goals. Whether that's in achieving X percentage of growth, whether that's achieved in terms of improving customer satisfaction or member satisfaction. But that I think ultimately the success of an IT strategy is based on the business achieving its KPIs, measures, and productivity.
Yeah, that's a good point. That ties back around to what you said right at the beginning, wasn't it? Which is it's I should stop saying IT strategy. It's business strategy.
Well, I think, to be fair though, within the business strategy, there clearly is a technology sort of strategy, and there'll be specific things there. And it's making sure that it's probably, you don't just want, let's say you've put up a brand new self-service sort of feature, and it's absolutely sort of brilliant, the capability and what you can do. But in terms of actually accessing that, so the authentication and how you actually get to it, that hasn't really been sort of done. So, users aren't actually going to adopt that service because it's, that they'll find it so hard to actually get to it that they don't bother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
So I think there's, again, that there's specific things in IT, and that things like adoption, authentication, how you keep something secure, how it's easy to access, that they're often things that the IT team don't shout about enough at the beginning, but then definitely the business and the consumers will be shouting about it at the end, probably at the wrong time.
Yeah, because maybe like say the consumers will think that's a given. Obviously, it's going to come with authentication or something like that. But to tackle that on the IT side of things could be a reasonable amount of effort to set that up. But got you. What about just going back to the communication piece again? What about who's? I guess the answer is everybody or all the different leaders. But how do you tackle decisions being made in sort of a siloed space? I'm just thinking about technology decisions I've seen before being made without a technology person in the room quite often. So you've had a sales pitch from a vendor, stakeholders are getting excited about what they've been told. Hopefully it's deliverable. Maybe they've been sold a little bit of a pipe dream, but you often don't have the technology person maybe in the room there as well, giving that balance. Have you seen that?
I've definitely seen that. I think it happens more frequently than it should happen. And I think actually the way to try and address that is quite simple, and it's actually make sure that you get the right people in the room. So, but that's not necessarily necessarily managers or leaders. It's actually experts.
Yes, sure.
And I think it's, you know, if you really want to design something well, it's really important to get the right technology person in the room, but probably also, you know, somebody from the business and potentially a sort of customer who really understands how that process or that sort of product sort of works, or really understands the sort of challenges. And, you know, that expertise is absolutely sort of invaluable. And sometimes I think it's actually hierarchy in organisations which ends up preventing that.
I think so, yeah.
So, and the other thing that I think is that actually some of the people that you need to get involved in sort of projects, so the experts, are often really busy doing sort of critical operational tasks. So it's not as easy to get them to sort of spend a couple of hours to talk about something. Whereas sometimes it's much easier to get a manager to come and have a couple of hours to talk about something. So, you know, particularly when you're doing sort of transformation, I think you've got to really sort of consider how you can access the subject matter experts you've got right across the business. And, you know, as you rightly said, get the right people talking to each other. Sounds really simple, but I think in practice we've all seen that it's actually a lot harder than it seems.
Yeah, I've lost count of the amount of times I've seen a beautiful looking slide deck of how this solution or this like a delivery of a piece of technology is going to solve all of a business's problems, but it's almost like the technical people that are going to actually have to deliver that is the first time they see it is way too late. Yeah, it's already been approved, everyone's excited, budget's been signed off, yes, this is what we're going to be doing, and then it's handed over to the delivery team and they're going, this isn't really deliverable, what does this mean, you know? So yeah,
I don't know if you've seen this, Owen, but I've certainly seen it as well. I think it, you know, probably even 5 years ago, but a sort of decade ago, technology I don't think was as specialised as it is now. I think as technology is advancing, it's becoming much more specialised. So, you know, cloud engineers, data engineers, specific sort of you know, technology sort of engineers. And the other thing is that I think that the business is becoming much more sort of understanding of sort of technology as well. So their sort of technology skill levels have gone up. But generally, the need for experts is certainly sort of increased. And I think, you know, we definitely find within sort of our own business is that, you know, where you've got the sort of right experts, then you deliver a really sort of great job. And I think the days of having sort of generalists, particularly in the sort of technology and the sort of consulting sort of space, are numbered really, because I think that, you know, you have to have specialist teams and specialist sort of capability.
Yeah, absolutely. So just on the back of the you know, having the right people in the room at the right time, as well as getting the technology people involved at the right stage, which should be at the beginning. On the flip of that, also getting the process owners, so that's the people who are delivering the process at the organisation involved at the right time, also quite critical and something that I think sometimes gets missed. Would you?
Yeah, I definitely do think that gets missed in terms of process owners. And I think, you know, particularly when you're talking about sort of strategy, you've got to make sure that you have the right people as the sort of process owners, and sometimes you've probably got to realise that the right people to be the process owner for that aren't actually the sort of process owner at the moment, or they're actually not defined as a sort of process owner. So it's identifying the right person first.
Absolutely.
And then I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier on. It's actually making sure that you've created capacity for that process owner to be involved in the project.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly, again, another thing that we push for with the team I'm involved in at the minute, because we've been involved in a few things before where the process owner knows their process inside out. It's the person we need to be working with to make this project a success, but they they just haven't got the capacity to be involved with this IT project, which is, you know, going to take however many days of their week or whatever it might be out to focus on it. But where we see really quick, speedy delivery with the best value in terms of outcomes is when you've got that process owner embedded within the team. You kind of form this outcome focused team, agile squad, whatever we might want to call it, which is the developers, but the process owner from the business with the BA and the delivery leads and things, but like working together as a team for a period of time with, you know, maybe daily stand-ups even, where it's like, you know, proper iterative fast-paced development. Okay, well, you mentioned this yesterday as a possible requirement. We've done a bit of a proof of concept. Does that look kind of what you were thinking? Having that access to the process owner is so key, and for them to have the space to play with the product as it's being built in sort of test or staging environments to then get their creative ideas flowing and grow their backlog. But
and I think that is so important. And again, I think organizations that are quite sort of clever at this as well is that sometimes process owners, when you say, or we'd like you to get involved in a sort of technology program or a big sort of transformational sort of program, it can be, I don't know anything about sort of technology, and you know, you actually you probably need to be able to explain to, you know, them the value that they can sort of bring, and what we really want is your knowledge of how that sort of process works in reality, and that's hugely sort of valuable for it. So I think it's important in how you sort of engage the process owner community and the wider process owner community, so they want to be involved in it, and maybe they feel that they can get involved in it. Because if you don't feel that you can get involved in it, then sometimes, you know, you'll be really quiet.
Exactly. Yeah, and then the IT solution is done to them rather than them being part of the journey. Ironically, in fact, you could argue it's more beneficial for the process owner to feel they don't know much about technology, because that allows them to be, as we mentioned earlier, agnostic to what the actual solution to their process is. They don't necessarily have a bias because they know a little bit about technology, so therefore they might have a preference. I think we should build it in this tool. Actually, if they came to it going, I'm not technical at all, but this is my process, this is how it works, and this is kind of what I need as an outcome, then that's great. We can then solution it together and land on the right tool for the job.
Yeah, absolutely. Finding those experts is really key, and getting them involved in the projects in the right way. And you know, if you can do that, you definitely will, you know, have a much greater chance of success.
Yeah, I think so. So I don't think it would be right without mentioning AI and that kind of technology. Where do you see that sitting in IT or business strategies of the future? Do you just specifically be talking about AI?
Well, look, I mean, I think it would be. I think everyone probably knows that technology is advancing at such a rate, and you know, AI is going to play, you know, probably an important role in lots of strategies going forwards. I probably, again, I think, you know, for business and IT leaders, the most important thing, I think, is that those things are here and they're going to continue to evolve. That the most important thing is making sure that you have the capability and the capacity within your organization in order to be able to leverage those things in a really sort of positive way. So I think it's investing time in your people capability, in your capacity around those things. You know, the likelihood is that you know, if you try and use really sort of sophisticated new sort of tools and you don't really know how to use them, you're probably not going to get a great result.
Yeah. That plays back to what we were talking about earlier on, isn't it? Which is, because I was wondering as I asked that question whether that's too specific a thing to include in a strategy. You know, if we start talking about specific tools and technologies, you know, product Y we're gonna roll that product out, and that's in our strategy? Or is the strategy more we want to reduce the amount of time it's taking us to respond to a call in a call center, or make a certain process more efficient? Again, keep saying it, agnostic to the technology. Whereas if you were just going, right, AI, everyone's talking about it, so we need to have AI in our strategy, we're going to do it because everyone's talking about it, but not really. And then doing what I said earlier, which is, now where can we throw it? What process can we point AI at, rather than going, actually, no, let's work out what our priorities are from a process point of view, and then we'll solution it appropriately. And in a lot of cases, that might include AI technology.
And I think that's exactly the right way, but it's really important, I think, that you, when you set up a strategy, as we said right at the beginning, Owen, that, you know, at the end of the day, we can use lots of sort of fancy words, but it's actually people who execute the strategy. And if you've got a strategy, and you know that strategy is based on lots and lots of sort of new things which your teams have little or sort of no experience in, it's probably not going to not going to go that well. So sometimes there has to be an element of sort of pragmatism in terms of, you know, choose things where, you know, you're confident that you've either got the capability or that you can get the capability.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Cool. Well, thank you, Pete. That's been great. So now is the time to crack open a drink for the last question. Try not to keep it too lively. So we've gone for Karev this time round. That's what we had in. So this is a Cornish lager. Try to keep the drink as local as possible. And I'm still waiting for them to create a special podcast beer for me. So maybe this one will get the views that we need to make that happen. Cheers,
Owen.
Thank you very much. So last question.
I can recommend Karev.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Last question. Chance for you to plug any sort of podcasts or books or where you go to get your learning.
I suppose one that resonates with me is High Performance with Jake Humphrey and Damien, and they've got an associated sort of book with that. But I think it's just it's a podcast that's evolved over a number of years, and I've followed it, and you know, they have lots of, you know, high achievers on there, but the focus is less on the sort of their own sort of achievement, but more on sort of how they've done it, and how they've overcome adversity, and how they've created the right culture and the right sort of mindset, and you know, how they've sort of cared about people, how they've looked after people, and the benefit that's actually sort of given them. So I definitely really like that podcast, and I think it's brilliant how that podcast has actually evolved as well.
Great. I will check that out. I did have a look earlier. I think there are over 200 episodes, so we've got a little way to go yet, but that's something for us to aim for potentially with this one.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thanks very much again, Pete, for coming on. Great to have a chat.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.